Good day everyone, I am Michelle Biglandro, and in this video we're going to tackle about cultural variation in metaphor and metonymy. But before that, let's first unbox what is cultural variation. So cultural variation refers to the rich diversity in social practices that different cultures exhibit around the world. So in this video, we're going to discuss the cultural variation in metaphor and metonymy. So while scholars in cognitive science tend to ask what is metaphor and how does it work in the mind, scholars in the social sciences tend to focus on the issue of what does metaphor do in particular social cultural context. So many anthropologists working on the issues related to metaphor had found new inspiration for their work in the cognitive linguistic theory of metaphor that was first developed by George Lakoff and Mark Johnson in their widely read book Metaphors We Live By on 1980. Metaphor may be dealt with as either a matter of language or of thought, or of both. What matters is that consideration is given to the social and discourse context in which metaphor is found. Furthermore, metaphor is broadly interpreted to importance given to context of metaphor use, to connections across social, cognitive, and discourse dimensions of metaphor use, and to communication between individuals or across social groups. So universality in metaphor. So metaphor is linguistic, conceptual, neutral, bodily, and social all at the same time. Since cognitive linguists claim that metaphor is of the mind, the brain, and the body, many people who are familiar with the view of metaphor that originates from Lakoff and Johnson's 1980 Metaphors We Live By often expect that what we call conceptual metaphors are largely or mostly universal. So let's begin first by having useful look at an example of universality in metaphorical conceptualization. So it seems that several unrelated languages may share several conceptual metaphors for particular emotion concepts, and one of these emotion concepts is happiness. There are a large number of conceptual metaphors for happiness in English. But three of them stand out in importance. Happiness is up, or I'm feeling up. Happiness is light, or she brightened up. And happiness is a fluid in a container, is bursting with joy. So Hungarian and Chinese as well also has the same conceptual metaphors, as can be seen, which shows the universality in metaphor. And it is a remarkable fact that the same metaphor exists in the three languages. After all, English, Chinese, and Hungarian belong to very different language families and represent very different cultures of the world, which presumably did not have much contact with each other when these conceptual metaphors evolved. So the question arises, how is it possible for such different languages and cultures to conceptualize happiness metaphorically in such similar ways? So three possible answers to the question suggest themselves. Number one, it has happened by accident. Number two, one language borrowed the metaphors from another. And number three, there is some universal motivation that enables the metaphors to emerge in these cultures. So next in the universality in metaphor is the dimensions of metaphor variation. So I will distinguish two kinds of dimensions along which metaphors vary: the cross-cultural and the within-culture dimension. But first, let us tackle what is cross-cultural dimension. So the most obvious dimension along which metaphors vary is the cross-cultural dimension. So in this dimension can be found in several distinct forms. One of them is what I call congruence. This is what obtains between a generic level metaphor and several specific level ones. Another is a case where a culture uses a set of different source domains for a particular target domain, or conversely, where a culture uses a particular source domain for conceptualizing a set of different target domains. Yet another situation involves cases where the set of conceptual metaphors for a particular target domain is roughly the same between two languages or cultures, but one language or culture shows a clear preference for some of the conceptual metaphors that are employed. So cross-cultural variation has its classification. Number one is congruent metaphors. So what is especially important about this conceptual metaphor is that it functions at an extremely general level. The metaphor does not specify many things that could be specified. For example, it does not say what kind of container is used, how the pressure arises, whether the container is heated or not, what kind of substance fills the container, liquid, substance, or objects, what consequences the explosion has, and so on. The metaphor constitutes a generic schema that gets filled out by a rich culture that has the metaphor. So when it is filled out, it receives unique cultural content at a specific level. In other words, a generic level conceptual metaphor is initiated culture specific ways at a specific level. So this is one kind of cross-cultural variation. And the second classification of cross-cultural variation is the alternative metaphors. So there can be differences in the range of conceptual metaphors, or more precisely the range of source domains, that languages and cultures have available for the conceptualization of particular target domains. This is what commonly happens in the case of emotion concepts as target. And next is the within culture variation that could be reported by Jeneline Oro. Chung 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 chung.
So now let's proceed to within culture variation. So this variation can occur along a number of dimensions, including the social, regional, ethnic, style, subcultural, diachronic, and individual dimensions. So in our report, we didn't include all of this variation. We just selected a few. So first, the social dimension. This includes the differentiation of society into men and women, young and old, middle class and working class, and so forth. So do men, the young, or the middle class use different metaphors than women, the old, or the working class? What do you think? So for me, I think, yes, they do. They use different metaphors, of course. And next is the regional dimension. Languages often develop new metaphors when their language is moved by some of its speakers to a part of the world different from where it was originally spoken. The spread of English to the Asia is one example. And next is the style dimension. Style is determined by a number of factors, such as audience, topic, setting, and medium. All of this may influence the selection and use of metaphors in discourse. For example, slang is typically rich in metaphor and may be characterized by metaphors not found in other varieties of language. So that's the style dimension. Next is metonymy. So metonymy has been known as a figure of speech since the times of the ancient Greeks. It was mostly studied in the context of literature and rhetoric and included a substitution of words. The term metonymy originated from ancient Greek philosophy, more precisely from Plato's Cratylus. It is derived by a Latin from Greek metonymia, meaning change or transformation, and onyma, meaning name. Metonymy is considered to be a cognitive process that plays an important role in human thoughts and language. One of the revolutionary principles of cognitive linguistics is the view that word meaning includes all our knowledge, not only linguistic, but at the same time, world knowledge. It is termed encyclopedic knowledge and arises from all our mental and physical experiences. So again, metonymy is a figure of speech in which a thing or concept is referred to by the name of something closely associated with that thing or concept. So we have examples here. The pen is mightier than the sword, from Edward Bulwer Lytton. Pen stands for the written word. Sword stands for military aggression. So that's metonymy. They describe a phrase by a certain word, a powerful word. So in example number 2, your older neighbor is quite the silver fox. Silver fox means an attractive older man. So I guess that's it. Thank you for listening and bye bye. That's all.